I never imagined I'd be reading those words at 11:15 p.m. alone in my kitchen in Des Moines. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. I'm not coming back. I've met someone better and already moved your things to storage. The text came with a screenshot, a bank transfer of $118,000 from our joint account to his personal account. I am Sarah Winslow, 63 years old, and I had spent my life believing in partnership, trust, and the quiet solidity of marriage. All of that had just vanished in 2 sentences and a digital image. I set my phone down, trying to calm the storm in my mind. 15 years of marriage gone in a click, betrayal, calculation, and greed, all wrapped into one. For months I had noticed the signs, the weekend trips he took that grew longer, the subtle wardrobe changes, the phone calls that ended whenever I walked into the room, and like a fool, I said nothing. I had always been meticulous, trained to notice details, discrepancies, irregularities, skills honed over decades in forensic accounting, but love, or perhaps hope, had blinded me, or maybe my first mistake was trusting someone who saw my life's work as just numbers. I opened my laptop and checked an email account he didn't know existed. 3 notifications from our bank's security system blinked back at me. Someone had tried to change passwords for accounts he had no knowledge of. He was thorough, I had to admit. I typed 2 words in reply. Good luck. Then I called my brother, Jason. Remember that contingency plan we discussed years ago? I asked. It's time. Are you sure? He asked, his voice tense. Yes, I said quietly. He just made his move. I hung up and stared at the wedding photo on the wall, the only one that still had both of us smiling. How could I have missed the signs? How had 15 years unravelled so quietly, so completely? I had met Henry, the man who had betrayed me at a networking event years ago. I was 48, freshly divorced from a brief, turbulent marriage, fully immersed in building my accounting practice. He was charming, ambitious, vibrant, and utterly indifferent to the details of my work. As long as we live well, he had said. That had seemed reasonable then, but now I realized it had been a warning I chose to ignore. I had supported his dream of opening a business, investing nearly all my savings. I signed papers for bigger houses, luxury vehicles, vacations, all the trappings of a life he wanted. My father once warned me while we were fixing a deck, Maggie, make sure he values the work you do, not just the money, but you. I smiled and nodded, dismissing the thought. 6 years into the marriage, I began quietly restructuring my finances, LLCs, trusts, crypto investments, offshore accounts. He knew only of our joint checking and savings. Over the years, he became increasingly involved in social circles that demanded appearances and extravagance. Weekends turned into full weeks away. The last birthday he remembered after forgetting mine was marked with a lavish watch, a gesture I accepted while quietly finalizing contingency measures I had long contemplated. The morning after the text, I moved as if nothing had happened, but my mind was a storm. I logged into my primary financial system, custom-built for professional and personal use, and activated the contingency protocol Jason and I had meticulously designed. I froze all joint accounts, triggered a fraud alert on the transfer, and sent detailed documentation to my attorney instructing her to file for divorce immediately. I called my mother, trying to keep my voice even. Henry's left me. He took the money, moved my things, all while supposedly on vacation. She was quiet before finally saying, I'm sorry, Sarah, but I can't say I'm surprised. What are you going to do? Exactly what I've been preparing to do for years. Protect what's mine, I said. Hours later, my phone lit up with calls and texts, his name flashing repeatedly. I ignored them. Instead, I drove to the storage facility he had texted, retrieved 2 boxes of personal belongings, and found the rest, family photos, mementos from my father, gone. This wasn't just about money, it was my life, my history, 15 years discarded. He thought he could erase me. I settled into a coffee shop and began digging. Using licensed financial databases, I traced the finances of a woman Henry had been tagging online, the someone better he had mentioned. Her business was buried under debt, maxed out credit cards, leases she couldn't cover, and Henry had co-signed a loan 2 months prior. My anger turned to clarity. I wasn't angry, I was focused. Monday morning I walked into my office as if nothing had happened. My assistant, Valerie, raised her eyebrows. "I thought you'd be taking time off," she said. "Did he call?" I asked, flat. "Yes, 3 times. He sounded upset. Said there was a misunderstanding with the accounts," Valerie replied. I nodded. "If he calls again, tell him to reach my attorney." By noon, he showed up in person. Designer sunglasses, a carefully curated smile, the image of control. "Sarah, there's been a huge misunderstanding with the bank. All accounts are frozen," he said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Not a misunderstanding," I replied quietly. "You transferred money without authorization. The bank flagged it as fraud." His colour faltered. "I'm your husband. You can't do this. I've already made commitments, deposits, payments." "Yes, I know everything," I said evenly. "And now you're being investigated for financial misconduct." 15 years of manipulation, charm and deceit could not stand against preparation, vigilance and knowledge. For 3 days the puzzle became clearer. Transfers from our joint account, over a year, nearly $80,000, funneled into accounts and debts he thought I wouldn't notice. Jason and I traced every financial thread, leases, loans, co-signed debts, all leveraged against our marital assets. Henry had used our marriage to secure a new life, leaving me in the dark. By the next morning, my attorney and I had laid out an emergency asset protection plan. Banks froze all shared accounts, safeguarding my assets from further unauthorized use. When I presented the evidence to the woman Henry had been involved with, the color drained from her face. Every move he made, every hidden transfer had been documented. Meanwhile, a courier delivered my personal items, photos, heirlooms, sentimental objects. No note, no explanation, just a quiet restoration of what truly mattered. Phone calls from Henry became frantic. "What have you done?" he demanded. Calmly I replied, "The bank called in all the loans. They're seizing equipment tomorrow." His voice faltered. "This is vindictive." "No," I said steadily. "This is protection against fraud. Your schemes have consequences. The divorce will proceed. Lessons will be learned." 3 weeks later, court mediation confirmed my plan. He retained some possessions, but assumed full responsibility for debts incurred in my name. The banks recognized the fraud. His carefully constructed world crumbled, and I, for the first time in years, felt free. Not victorious, not vindicated, just free. I moved into a modest home, rebuilt slowly, and allowed life to return to its quiet rhythm. Measuring, cutting, assembling cabinets with Jason, sipping bourbon on the back porch. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. The open road stretched ahead, unplanned and unbound, and for the first time I realized, noticing the signs isn't enough. Preparedness is everything. I woke one morning to sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors of my new home. No texts, no missed calls, no gnawing uncertainty. Normalcy felt alien, but welcome. By mid-morning, I contacted my attorney. "We need to escalate, ensure the bank understands the full extent of his fraud, document everything before he can intervene." She agreed. "You've created a blueprint for security most people would spend years assembling." I smiled faintly. It's not about pride, it's about survival. I arranged a meeting with the woman involved in his schemes. Armed with documents, loans, leases, co-signed agreements, everything was irrefutable. His world began to crumble quietly, methodically. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration, fairness, responsibility, vigilance. Weeks later, I moved fully into my new home, quiet, modest, and full of possibility. I worked on the house with Jason, our rhythm meditative and calm. The next morning I packed my truck and set out, north towards the cabin, fishing, mornings untouched by his schemes. Open roads, freedom, peace. Would I trust so fully again? Perhaps, but only when I could see the signs, anticipate the moves, and know that my life belonged to me first. I never expected my life to unravel in the middle of my daughter's graduation celebration. I've decided to start a new life without you. The words hung in the air like a guillotine over the room. My husband, Gregory Caldwell, stood with his champagne glass raised, meant for the toast to my daughter Amelia's aegis. Vehemence, now a cruel prop in his announcement. The chatter of 50 guests froze mid-sentence. Eyes darted between us, waiting for the tears, the shouting, the dramatic collapse everyone assumed would follow. Instead, I smiled. Congratulations on your honesty. I am Bianca Caldwell, 54 years old. For decades, I had been the devoted wife and mother, putting my career dreams on hold to support Gregory through 3 business ventures, 2 career changes, and countless phases of finding himself. I raised our brilliant daughter, Amelia, who sat beside me, her graduation cap slightly askew, frozen in horror. From the corner of my eye, I saw Cassandra Wells, Gregory's much younger girlfriend, shifting uncomfortably at the back table. Cassandra, who I once called a friend, had attended our Christmas parties and sought my advice on her career. Now she was a symbol of my husband's betrayal. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed cream-coloured envelope. I placed it beside Gregory's plate. "What's this?" he demanded, the triumphant smirk faltering. "Something for you to read later," I replied, my voice steady. I kissed Amelia's cheek. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. Today is still your accomplishment." Then I turned to the stunned guests. "Please, enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." With that, I walked out. The Augusta summer heat hit me like a wave, but for the first time in years I could breathe freely. Behind me, I heard Gregory's frantic voice. "Bianca, what have you done?" I allowed myself a small smile. He had no idea that envelope contained the first step of a plan I had meticulously built for months. The years of silence and preparation. I had always been the practical one. While Gregory dreamed big and chased fleeting passions, I maintained stability. I had saved for Amelia's education while he risked our savings on ventures that lasted only months. My own dream, opening a financial consultancy for women, was perpetually postponed. I promised myself I would act only after Amelia graduated, when timing would hurt him the most. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our joint accounts, small transfers to unknown accounts. After 20 years managing our family finances, these stood out like glaring red flags. I didn't confront Gregory immediately. Something told me to wait, to watch. What I discovered was far worse than I imagined. He had been siphoning funds for over a year, financing dinners, jewellery, even looking at beachfront property for a life with Cassandra, while lecturing me about tightening our belts for retirement. Then came the text messages on his unlocked phone, plans for their new life, messages about finally being free, carefully timed for Amelia's graduation day. What Gregory didn't realize, or perhaps never understood, was that I was a financial professional of 30 years. I knew money trails. I remembered the prenuptial agreement he insisted upon when we married, ironically to protect his future earnings. It contained a fidelity clause that would become his undoing. While he plotted his escape, I built my case. Attorneys were consulted, every transfer documented, evidence of the affair preserved. I timed everything perfectly, knowing he wanted to avoid ruining Amelia's big day. What he didn't know was that I was always 3 steps ahead. The calm before confrontation, I didn't return to the restaurant. Instead, I drove to our home, a spacious colonial in Augusta's historic district. The house we had purchased 15 years ago, already promised. Et Cassandra in his texts. Everything looked the same. Family photos, the antique grandfather clock, the worn leather couch. Yet everything had changed. Upstairs I opened the master closet. Gregory's clothes were packed in suitcases, hidden in the back, ready for his grand exit tomorrow. Predictable. He always meticulously cared for appearances while ignoring the essentials. My phone buzzed with messages from friends, Amelia, even Gregory's sister, Diana. I only replied to Amelia, "I'm okay. This isn't your burden. Enjoy your day. We'll talk tonight. I love you." I had shielded her from the truth for months. She was brilliant, like me, practical yet compassionate, and I knew she would understand eventually. 3 hours later, I heard Gregory's car. The front door slammed. "Bianca!" His voice echoed through the house. I was in the living room, calmly reviewing documents on my laptop. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving the envelope. "You served me with divorce papers today of all days," he accused, flustered. "I thought it aligned nicely with your plans," I replied evenly. "You wanted to start your new life. I'm simply helping facilitate the transition." "You had no right," he shouted. "I had every right," I interrupted, calm but firm. "Just as you had the right to choose Cassandra. We all make choices, Gregory. Yours is on display today." Gregory's eyes narrowed as he stared at me, incredulous. "This isn't over, Bianca," he hissed, clutching the envelope like it was a weapon. I met his gaze evenly. "You're welcome to try." He stormed through the house, searching for leverage, but the calm control I had cultivated for months was unshakable. Every step he had taken to build his new life, every secret transfer, every romantic dinner, every beachfront property viewed with Cassandra was already documented, ready to become his downfall. I poured myself a glass of water, watching him flail in predictable fury. He was always meticulous with appearances, but careless with what truly mattered. Predictable. The envelope and the truth. That envelope at the restaurant was only the beginning. Inside were divorce papers, financial evidence of his hidden transfers, and a careful explanation of the prenuptial agreement, one that specifically penalized infidelity. He had thought he could outrun it, but I had ensured that every loophole he relied on was sealed. When he demanded, "What is this, Bianca?" I calmly replied, "A reminder that choices have consequences." His phone buzzed incessantly, but I ignored it. Cassandra was probably wondering why her carefully orchestrated plan had already begun to crumble. Facing the betrayal head-on. "Bianca, you're being vindictive," Gregory spat, his voice rising. "This isn't like you." "Perhaps you never really knew me," I said softly, "just as I never really knew you." For nearly 3 decades, I had believed in him, through miscarriages, through early career failures, through the construction of our family life. I had supported his dreams, even when they endangered our stability. And for what? To be cast aside for someone 17 years younger, someone who had not shared in the sacrifices I had made. "Everyone's betraying me," Gregory muttered, pacing, but the irony was delicious in. His sister Diana had already confronted him about his affair. Our mutual friends, once silent, were beginning to choose sides. Cassandra had no idea about the financial evidence or the prenuptial clause she would soon learn would prevent Gregory from fulfilling their plans. I gathered my purse and an overnight bag. "You have until tomorrow evening to remove your things from the house," I stated. "After that, the locks will be changed." Gregory tried one last tactic, desperation leaking into his tone. "What about Amelia? Have you thought about how this affects her?" I felt a surge of anger break my calm facade. "Don't dare use our daughter as a shield, Gregory. You certainly weren't thinking about her when you planned your beachfront life with Cassandra." The confrontation with Cassandra. Later, Diana and I watched as Gregory returned, Cassandra in tow. Cassandra shifted nervously, her blonde hair catching the afternoon light. She was younger, yes, but naive to the real stakes. Gregory, meanwhile, looked furious and increasingly desperate. "Unfreeze the accounts. This isn't like you, Bianca," he demanded. "Perhaps you never really knew me," I repeated, calm and precise. "Or perhaps you never really knew yourself." Amelia, standing protectively in front of me, echoed my growing resolve. "You should have been reasonable before humiliating Mom in front of everyone, Dad." Cassandra looked ashamed, finally realizing that she had been swept into a storm she had neither the skill nor the foresight to navigate. Cracks were forming in their united front, and I felt a quiet satisfaction. I remained seated, observing as the carefully constructed illusions of Gregory's life began to unravel. For years I had smoothed over conflicts, held families together, and maintained a calm presence. Now I was free to let the consequences fall where they belonged. Taking control. 3 days, I stated firmly. The accounts remain frozen until the preliminary hearing. The judge will determine appropriate division of assets then. Gregory sputtered. 3 days? What am I supposed to do? You have your personal account, I reminded him, deliberately emphasizing the one he had been funneling money into for over a year. It was enough for daily living, but far less than needed to pursue the dreams he and Cassandra had plotted. Cassandra's head whipped toward him. A separate account? How much? Gregory avoided answering. The cracks between them were widening, and I didn't need to intervene further. The unravelling had begun on its own. The calm before court, Diana and I settled in her sunroom, surrounded by books and potted plants. She poured us wine, raising her glass. To new beginnings, she said. I smiled. This ending, I realized, was not truly the end. It was a doorway to something new, independence, power, and reinvention. Amelia arrived soon after, still in her graduation dress, tear-streaked but resolute. She fell into my arms. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "I didn't want to ruin your final semester," I explained. "This day was always yours." Later, over wine and discussion, I revealed the sum. A full story, the affair, the financial deceit, the prenuptial safeguard, and my strategic timing. Amelia's loyalty and understanding warmed me, yet I remained cautious. Her relationship with her father would be separate from the consequences he faced. The preliminary court filing had already frozen Gregory's hidden accounts. He now had only limited access to funds, enough for survival, but nothing near what he had promised Cassandra. I could feel the tension building, the inevitability of justice taking shape. Part 3. Justice and Reinvention. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. I walked into the small Augusta courthouse with Philip Anderson, my trusted attorney. The rain pounded against the windows, as if mirroring the storm Gregory had created in our lives. Gregory appeared haggard, a shadow of the man who had once confidently announced his betrayal in front of our friends. He had hastily retained a young associate from a corporate law firm, completely unprepared for the complexities of family law. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for theatrics, reviewed the prenuptial agreement with careful precision. "This document appears to be in order," she stated, fixing Gregory's attorney with a stern gaze. "Do you contest its validity?" The young lawyer stammered, "Your Honour, we believe the agreement has expired due to the length of time that has passed." The judge flipped to the relevant section. Section 18 clearly states the duration is for the term of the marriage plus any legal proceedings resulting from its dissolution. There is no expiration date indicated. Gregory leaned forward, whispering frantically to his lawyer, whose discomfort was palpable. The evidence of systematic fund transfers, the hidden accounts, the affair, all documented and undeniable, was about to become his undoing. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence of fund transfers appears to violate financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. I am ruling to maintain the freeze on joint accounts pending full financial discovery. Mr. Caldwell's personal account will remain accessible for living expenses, but the family home will remain in Mrs. Caldwell's possession, as stipulated in the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause. Gregory's face flushed dark red. "This is outrageous," he muttered, but the judge's sharp look silenced him immediately. Consequences unfold. As the hearing ended, I walked out with Philip, leaving Gregory to absorb the consequences of his actions. Every carefully constructed illusion, the beachfront property, the new apartment, the luxurious lifestyle promised to Cassandra, was unravelling. 2 weeks later, Diana called me, laughter in her voice. "Have you heard? Cassandra moved out, already." I couldn't help but smile. The woman who had thought she was part of a glamorous escape quickly realized Gregory's financial reality was far less impressive than he had portrayed. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Building a new life. I rented a small office downtown and began building Coldwell Financial Transitions, the consultancy I had dreamed of for years. My first clients were women navigating divorces, career changes, and widowhood. Word of mouth brought more. I specialized in preparing women to protect their finances and re-guise and control over their lives, something I knew firsthand. Amelia, now working at a marketing firm in Charleston, called often. "Mum, I'm so proud of you. You're helping people through their worst moments." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me," I replied, empowering women to prepare for whatever life throws at them. The final divorce hearing. The final divorce hearing coincided with what would have been our 29th anniversary. Gregory arrived looking worn and defeated. His business was struggling without my financial guidance, and Cassandra had long abandoned him. Most mutual friends had distanced themselves. The judge upheld the prenuptial agreement in full. Gregory left with his personal belongings, his limited account, and a struggling business, far less than he had anticipated. I retained the home, the majority of our investments, and my retirement accounts. The justice was poetic. The same document he had insisted on to protect himself had now become his downfall. Gregory approached me one last time. "I made a terrible mistake. Is there any chance we could—" "No," I interrupted, firm yet gentle. "That door is closed." "I understand," he replied, and for the first time I believed him. Reinvention and freedom. 6 months later, Coldwell Financial Transitions had grown from a single office to a thriving consultancy with 2 associates. I had reclaimed not only financial independence, but also my sense of self. I was no longer just a wife or mother. I was a mentor, a business owner, and an advocate. Amelia visited often, proud of what I had built. If Dad had just been honest from the beginning, he might have kept half of everything, she said, shaking her head. "Sometimes people can't see beyond what they want in the moment," I replied. The envelope I had handed Gregory at the restaurant wasn't just a tool of revenge. It had been the key to discovering a D, or I never knew existed. Behind it, I found freedom, self-respect, and the power to reinvent my life on my own terms. For the first time in years, I breathed freely, knowing that betrayal had not defined me. Instead, it had propelled me into a future I had always deserved, but never before dared to claim.